If there's one thing I know about gamers, it's this: they like to go fast. Well, now you can go fast in an old school way with a new compilation of 3 classic Super Nintendo releases. The Top Racer Collection is a bundle of 3 Super Nintendo Top Gear racing games, and also 1 new, slightly updated version. The 3 SNES games were originally developed by Gremlin Interactive, who also published the Lotus series of racing games, which these were clearly influenced by, and published by Kemco, who put out a lot of those Bugs Bunny and or Mickey Mouse games you might remember from the 8-bit days. There are over a dozen entries in this franchise, spanning the Super Nintendo to the PS2, with various Genesis, N64, and Game Boy variations along the way. Your first thought might be that these are related to that British TV show hosted by Matt LeBlanc called Top Gear. They are not, they just share the same name. It was not a licensed product. However, I would imagine it was probably more complicated to renew the original name for this re-release, and so the series was simply rebranded as Top Racer, which is what the games had already been known as in other parts of the world, like Japan for example. While the franchise had moderate success here in the States and elsewhere, it was crazy popular in Brazil and Latin America, where it managed to influence car culture there for years to come. It makes perfect sense then to get this classic compilation from a Brazilian-based game publisher. This new collection is available on PC and Switch, and all the currently available Xbox and PlayStation models. For this review, I'll be playing it on the Xbox Series S. The first thing you might notice when you fire this up is the name and branding of Bleem, which is odd. If you're old like me, you might remember that Bleem was a product that would allow you to play a very small number of PlayStation games on your Dreamcast or PC, which then ultimately got the small company sued into oblivion. It seems as though the brand name and logos were purchased by Pico Interactive as part of an initiative to build a digital retro gaming storefront, and I guess some of that work was also done here as part of this project. Weird tiny mystery solved, sort of. Anyway, let's see what these games are all about.
Created for the new Super Nintendo Entertainment System. You won't believe the power. You won't believe the control. You won't believe the jumps, the curves, or the feeling you get until you experience it for yourself.
Wow, that's fast.
Only on the next generation from Nintendo. Now you're racing with power, superpower.
What you'll probably notice when you load up the initial Top Racer game, which first came out in 1992, is that it's always a split screen affair, no matter how you choose to play it. If you're not playing against another person in the room, or online, as that is a possible option here, you'll see a computer-controlled racer on the bottom of the screen at all times. Distracting at first because I wasn't expecting it, but I quickly got used to it. And, you know, it's one of these racing games. You understand exactly what that means when you see it. It's a late 80s, early 90s style racer, like Outrun or Victory Run, which I played recently for the TurboGrafx. There are no checkpoints here, at least in the modes I was playing. You're just racing for the best times and hoping to stay alive in the point totals. Another thing you'll notice, maybe not right away, but shortly after you start playing and navigating menus, is that you will spend a lot of time selecting options in the game's updated interface. The gameplay is purely from the original games, but navigating around, a lot of your choices, including picking your car and its features, is done in brand new menu screens. This again is no doubt to avoid any mention of the Top Gear name. Hell, you don't even get the intro screens for any of these games. You launch into a race straight from the new menus. I get why it's done this way, and if it had to be done, this is about as elegant of a solution as you could possibly get. So, kudos for putting in the work to make the gameplay available. I wanted to say we were getting remastered music here as the game plays, mostly because it sounds too good. The soundtrack here slaps. Most notable about this first game, though, is that the mix doesn't quite sound right, and there's no way to adjust it. I needed a little less soundtrack and a little more race audio, and I was unable to make that happen. Oh well, I guess I'm forced to listen to the awesome soundtrack, woe is me. Upon going back and checking the original game, Nope, the soundtrack was just that good. The mix is still off, especially in the first race, but that's just the game. Apologies to the remaster team for the egregious slander I just unleashed upon them a few sentences back. 1993's Top Racer 2 moves the action full screen in single player mode. However, if you really think about it, you're still only playing on half the screen, as the top part of your display is only showing your HUD. Whatever, I'm not really hung up on the programming limitations of the time, I just think the changes are interesting. Also, the camera placement has been lowered somewhat from the first game, meaning you don't have as good of a view of the road as you did, making oncoming obstacles and turns a little more challenging. This second game introduces several new features to the franchise on top of full screen mode. You can now actually wreck your car instead of just bouncing off of things, and vehicle damage is now a factor as well. During races, you'll notice your driver is suddenly quite chatty with other racers, telling them to eat dirt and other such insults as you pass them. You'll even shout "crash and burn" when you wreck, and well, this is now my favorite thing ever. Other additions include weather and time of day changes, the ability to purchase upgrades for your car, in-race pickups like extra nitro, and even sick jumps on the highway. Top Racer 2 adds a lot of cool stuff to its very familiar brand of racing, and it's great, it's all great. In 1995, there was Top Racer 3000, which launches the franchise 1,000 years into the future, where the Top Racer championships are still going, but no one knows why or who started them. It's basically the Jason X of the Top Racer series. Now you're racing on different planets throughout the galaxy, flying off to a new one at the end of every race. You'll need to refuel and repair your space car by driving over certain colored patches on the roadways. And according to the manual, the game also introduces weapons to the mix. I didn't get to a race with my initial playtime with the game that had weapons, or if they were there I missed picking them up, but yep, there's supposed to be weapons here now. Top Racer 3000 also introduces 4-player split-screen races. This was accomplished with the various 4-player adapters for the SNES back in the day, but now all you'll need is 4 controllers synced to the same system, and it should be fine. Top Racer 2 seems to be the sweet spot for me as far as this series goes, but I do really like all the trappings of Top Racer 3000. My biggest beef really is that the cars are all too flat, but that's just a personal preference and really not a huge detriment to the game. I just prefer looking at my cars in the first 2 entries. Other than that, yeah, gimme all the space stuff you've got. Top Racer Crossroads is the new game included with this, which takes the first game and adds 4 new cars for you to choose from, inspired by the car scene in Brazil and also by other racing games. There might be some other graphical tweaks in there as well, but someone would need to point them out to me because, you know, you're going really fast. I'm all about these kinds of retro collections of games on modern consoles, especially when they have extra features like achievements or trophies or cool stuff to look at in the menus. Here, in addition to popping sweet trophies as you play, you get a gallery of the Japanese manuals and box art. They look nice and are good to have. The box art for the second game in particular is pretty striking. I could see having a poster of that on my wall as a teenager. It would have been cool to have the US stuff as well, but because it all would have been branded with their Top Gear logo, the omission makes sense. Again, it's not ideal, but I get it. There's also online play, leaderboards, save states, all things you might expect, but also they're not always guaranteed. And your settings and adjustments carry over from title to title, which again, isn't a guarantee in a collection like this, but hey, good for you. You can play some of these elsewhere on a handful of different carts for the Evercade system, for example, but this collection is a nice, neat, and tidy place for the first 3 Top Racer games. I've enjoyed the time I've spent with it so far, and I plan on playing lots more of it, so that sounds like a recommendation. Check out the Top Racer collection, it's pretty cool.